Hello, I'm Jody Bergsma. This Homeland series represents an unprecedented approach to world communications. An independent American producer, along with the largest documentary film studio in the Soviet Union, have joined to create 12 programs about life in both countries. We will visit 6 locations in each nation, selected to present key aspects of that country's character. Each producer has selected the locales he wants to visit. We will see subjects of interest to us, and we will also see aspects of our country as they appear to others. We will travel alongside the producers as they meet with people of remarkably varied lifestyles. It is through the eyes of people, as they tell their story, that we discover their history, their current attitudes, and their hopes for the future. To do this credibly and accurately, we have formed one production crew composed equally of Soviet and American personnel. The people of both countries will be watching the identical presentation. We will see footage from both cameras, cut together to tell one story. In this first episode, we will travel to the Southern Soviet Republic of Armenia. We will see the crew begin their first work together and meet with the Armenian people.
I am Stanley Malijan-Odom, and I live in Washington State. I am an independent documentary producer and a father of 3. I was raised with strong ethnic values, ones I realized my own children were missing. For this reason, I wanted to take my oldest son, Matthew, back to the land and heritage of our grandparents. They were from Armenia, a country that is now a member of the Soviet Union. And to understand Armenia, we must begin to learn about the Soviet Union. This desire to learn has developed into an international joint production series, with Alexander Andreev as my Soviet counterpart.
We will be using a Soviet camera and an American camera to produce a film in only one version for the viewers of both our nations.
We have come from our American homes to the Soviet Union for our first shoot. We know that Armenia is a republic in territorial conflict, and that we will face unforeseeable problems here. The mood is a mixture of excitement and some fear. I was an Army tank captain for 6 years, and I trained to fight the Soviets, possibly right here. I am American and Armenian, and today I have returned to my homeland. Yerevan, the capital of Soviet Armenia, a city that lies beneath historic Mount Ararat, the site of the ruins of biblical Noah's Ark. A city that is modern, industrialized, and growing, yet one whose origins date back centuries before the birth of Christ. Since my arrival here, I have found myself thinking about my heritage and where it is that I belong.
Hello, Kania. Yergo.
I wonder about my son. Does he also feel these questions about his heritage? I'm concerned about our mixed crew. Can we in fact create one film that will speak to people of different countries? Yet it remains the Soviet Union itself that most troubles me. How will I tell its story? Where will I begin? I'm going to ask the people I meet what it is like to be an Armenian citizen in the Soviet Union. Is there freedom here? I want to see if my concepts of this country are valid. I have always thought of the Soviet Union as a police state, so I asked my co-producer, Alexander, to take me to meet the country and city police, the militia. I watched the officer go about his duties and meet with people who were his neighbors and his friends. This easy exchange was unexpected. Alexander seemed irritated at my requests for these visits.
As in most countries, the role of the police is to keep order. It is the same here with our village and city militia. I was puzzled by Stanley's insistence on visiting them. Why, I wondered, when we have this whole beautiful country to see, did he want to spend a day with the police?
I came here expecting to see a strong, controlling presence. I was searching for this. What I did see was not much different from my own hometown. Some of my own preconceptions did not match what I was seeing. Our first meeting was with Shvarsh Karapetyan, a world champion underwater swimmer. He is the holder of 129 competitive awards and is also the recipient of the Soviet Union's Order of Merit for bravery. Shvarsh saved the lives of 20 people who were trapped in a trolley bus in 30 feet of water. Through his repeated dives to the vehicle, he permanently damaged his health and ended his competitive career. He struck me as a modest and humble man who now volunteers his time to the teaching of children's water sports. Matthew and I had met him for lunch a few days before, and he had asked Matt if he would like to learn to scuba dive. My son's response required no translation. Shvarsh grew up in a volatile part of the world. His small country borders on Turkey and Iran, and has suffered a long history of conquest and genocide. He spoke to me of the relationship between Armenia and her sister republics, of religious differences and historic territorial disputes.
We are free in our life and activities. And in my opinion, we flourish in this situation better than in any other. The reason for this is that our nation is quite small, and the territory is small, and we would have become a colony of probably any country. Considering this, being part of the Soviet Union seems to be the optimum alternative of life for the Armenian people.
What is becoming more clear to me is the importance of understanding the reasons a nation acts in a certain way. And this requires a knowledge of their history. Without this awareness, we judge them by their present actions alone, and this seldom proves completely accurate. To understand does not necessarily mean to agree, but it does mean to respect. I talked with my son about these thoughts, and he is proving to be quite a perceptive friend. At times when I am the most concerned, he reminds me of life's more important issues, such as a bowl of chocolate ice cream. Armenia has been under communism since 1920. From the beginning of this project, I knew of one meeting I wanted to film, and I knew the questions I would ask. American television producers had told me filming this meeting would be difficult.
Stanley wanted to film a meeting of the Bureau of the City Communist Party Committee of Yerevan. As a Communist Party member, I have seen many such meetings before, but for Stanley, as an American, this was an important first time. This day, the party members were discussing preparations for the arrival of winter, and the chiefs of various departments were present. Almost all were Armenian.
Ada Toposian, 38 years old and the second secretary of the City Communist Party. Her parents returned to Armenia from Lebanon 40 years ago. She was born here. I asked her, do the Armenian people feel oppressed by the Soviet Union? Do they feel a part of the Soviet Union?
If a person living in this republic can speak his own language, likes his own country, which is a republic, and at the same time likes his neighbor, the Soviet Union, then how can we speak of oppression in this case?
So you're telling me that the average citizen on the street is pleased to be a part of the Soviet Union. Is this the way I should interpret this? He considers himself a member of a republic that is truly independent?
Ես կարող եմ դա իհարկե վստահությամբ ասել,
I'm absolutely sure of the things I say. This is not just my personal opinion, but other people too, especially older people. You are saying that we possibly do not have our own state, a republic, just because we are all part of the Soviet Union. People here would not understand this question as you put it.
Many of the questions I have been asking concern the difficult concept of freedom. We Americans place our freedom above all else. We have fought and would fight again to defend it. We see freedom as our basic right to worship, speak, vote, and travel. In essence, our right to be independent. To the Soviets, it means something quite different.
We Soviet people are also free. We are free from concerns about our employment, medical care, and education. We are free from many insecurities. This is the strength of our system. This does not mean we don't have problems. We have many, such as a huge bureaucracy and an inflexible economic system.
The challenge for both countries remains to use our unique strengths to solve our own problems. Every Armenian here lives with the knowledge of the genocide of 1915 and 16, when over 2 million people died. There are few alive today who lived through those times. This day, we came to the home of one of the survivors. Julianne Kazarian is 93 years old and is known as grandmother to over 60 grandchildren, many of whom she helped to raise. She walks miles each day to gather and prepare her own food. We were treated to a banquet prepared by her friends and relatives who seemed to materialize from nowhere. We laughed and toasted the good things. The sights and smells of Armenian cooking brought back childhood memories, and I enjoyed watching my son's eyes. Mrs. Kazarian reminded me of my own grandmother, who helped to raise me, and I remembered the times she and I were together like this. She's gone now, and I thought of how she'd smile to see me here. After our meal was over, Mrs. Kazarian spoke of the nightmares she had seen long ago. During our talk, she actually seemed to come and go from the room, as if she were visiting old graves.
There was never a day when a child of some family did not die. All of them were buried just under the stones because there was no material, no place to bury the dead. Each step on that land meant a grave of some Armenian.
The following day, she took us to visit the memorial honoring the genocide victims. She told me she will always remember the past, but today she lives with a different feeling inside her. She said that we have suffered much, but now we know for sure that no one will come and ruin us. We can keep going our own way. May God save us, she told me, from a repetition of these events. The time of the Turkish genocide also left the Armenian people with some heroic memories. The yearly festival at the village of Musaler celebrates the successful resistance and escape to freedom of hundreds of these villagers. At this celebration, my sense of heritage, which up to this time had been all around me, now began to come from within. For the first time, I felt it, and with this feeling, the question of my first day returned. Where do I belong? This sense of being divided grew and remained a concern which would not be resolved until my last day in the Soviet Union. During the festival, I also noticed some changes in the relationship between our crew members, and I spoke to Alexander about this.
Our people were beginning to trust one another and respect their counterparts' knowledge and judgment. There were times when my crew members would work with the Americans, and though communications were mostly through gestures, they were successful as a mixed team. My own relationship with Stanley was improving as we too began to develop a respect for each other. These were not simple times for us all, but we were learning about each other.
Not all I heard was simple and good. I listened to intelligent, serious, and sincere people tell me about problems on the state and national level. I was told of the excessive permissions and approvals required in order to travel outside the Soviet Union, that you can't just leave the country, and that you must work. Some goods are often difficult to obtain, and communications with the West are constrained. I was told that speaking with acquaintances about such matters often leads to unpleasant consequences. You may be labeled a troublemaker. Problems do exist here. That people would in fact talk to us of them is in itself an indication of the changes occurring in the Soviet Union today. Another way to measure change is to see the role played by religion in a culture. Armenia is its religion, and the land is filled with ancient reminders of this. It was the first nation to accept Christianity as its state religion almost 1,700 years ago. Surrounded by non-Christian countries, Armenians have paid dearly for their faith. The role of the church throughout these times has been to support and teach its people. It is the heart of Armenia and the pulse of the nation's spirit. Today, this pulse emanates from Holy Etchmiadzin, the seat of the largest faction of the Armenian Church. It is the center for the theological training of young priests and a depository of ancient religious artifacts. The mood here is one of tranquility and self-assurance. We are visiting a very old and very sacred place, the site of one of the earliest churches in this country's long history.
And I hope to do more.
We have come here for an audience with the Armenian Pope. What is the situation of the church today? Is it improving? And what of the future? These were questions I asked of His Holiness Vazken I, leader of the worldwide Armenian Apostolic Orthodox Church.
Christian faith in the life of the people is gradually developing. The number of baptisms is increasing. For example, now with our statistics, almost 70% of the children born are baptized in the Armenian church. Before the war, it was less than 10%. It was a different situation at that time, especially in the Stalinian period. Now the situation is very much improved. And His Holiness and we are satisfied with the situation now.
I still wondered if many Armenians were ready to throw off the control of the Soviet Union and become an independent country. The Pope's interpreter, himself a priest, immigrated to Armenia from Cyprus 10 years ago. After our audience, he led us through Etchmiadzin and answered this question. He said that he had heard this story before, and that it was ridiculous. When you know of our history, he continued, you must see our relationship with the Russians as a geopolitical one. Considering all, it is the best situation for us, and one we can work with. We can grow now as part of the Soviet Union. I asked the father about historical persecution and how this affects people's attitudes today.
It was always a war to preserve our own nation, our culture, our faith, our religion. So this is maybe one reason we have been good Christians. We have lost so much of what we have been in historical times. We are now, as His Holiness said, one. So it's like You lose all your fingers of your hand and you are kept with the little finger.
This little finger Armenia is left with represents only about 1/8 of its former size. The father told me that Armenians are patient, yet one day we will see our people reunited. Oppression and warfare have shaped Armenia. It is our last day here, and we have come to an old village in the hills. It exists today as it has for centuries. Close to 500,000 Armenians were casualties of the Second World War alone. The effects of this historical loss to warfare are visible in the attitudes of the people. They are wary, but quick to love if you can prove your sincerity. They are ready to grow now, and to demonstrate as a people how much they can accomplish. The Soviet Union as a whole lost more than 20 million people and were devastated as a nation by World War II. During my time here, I have seen how events like these have dominated the direction and nature of the Soviet Union. I've seen how important it is to appreciate the Soviet Union's past before I can begin to understand its present character. And given the new respect this insight brings, I feel even better equipped to continue with our film series. A traditional dinner and a time for celebration. Our bus ride and my concerns of that first day seem distant now. I no longer doubt the ability of our crew to work together. Alexander and I have found a common purpose, to tell an accurate story, and this goal has carried us through our differences. My son has seen much, and I hope that he has found respect for other people as well as for himself. I know today that I belong to both America and to Armenia. I feel at home in the United States and in the Soviet Union. It is my resolve, along with Alexander and the rest of our crew, to continue to tell the stories of our people.
In this episode, we visit Northwest Washington State with the Soviet producer on his first visit to America. He has come to find out what Americans know of the Soviet Union.
I like to film people at the end of their working day. At this time they have a special look, and I always try to guess what they are thinking about. Throughout the world, people are concerned with their family, children, happiness, their country, and yet at the same time all of us are quite different. Looking into the faces of Americans, I am trying to understand, how do contradictions between people arise? What makes one people see an enemy in the other? With the desire to get an answer to this question, I came to the United States, to Washington State and the city of Seattle. I was interested by the differences between Seattle and Moscow, architecture and transportation, but even more surprised by the similarities of the people. I could meet any of these people in any big Soviet city, and the tempo of life here is just as swift. These things are universal. In contrast, 60 miles north of Seattle lies an area known as the Skagit Valley. It is the home of loggers, fishermen, farmers, common Americans. It is also home to my friend and co-producer Stanley Odell. On his invitation, I came here with my daughter Masha. While becoming acquainted with the area, some thoughts began to come to me. I realized that nations do not seem to be able to look at themselves in a mirror. They seem reluctant to see and understand what they appear like from the outside. It is my hope that my meetings with American people, the reason for my coming halfway around the world, will help me to better understand not only them, but my own country as well. My first meeting took place at a typical American dairy farm. Its owner, Don Moe, is married with 2 children and is a university graduate in agriculture. He has worked on this farm with his father and brother since childhood. When his father retired, Don purchased the farm from him. This was an interesting detail for me, since such financial relationships between relatives are uncommon in my country. I was also surprised at Stanley's reaction to the shooting instructions I gave to my cameraman.
I was excited when I heard Alexander tell his cameraman to capture the sense of responsibility Don Moe felt for his business. In America, personal accountability is common. I had not thought to stress this concept, but for the Soviets it was very significant. Because of the changes occurring in their country today, they are interested in the responsibilities of private enterprise. Through writing the script together, we were able to show the other side what they wanted to see, not just what we thought they wanted.
I was impressed by Don's sense of love and pride in his hard work, his family, farm, home and country. He is like many Americans I met. Later in the day, Don's daughter Britta came home from school. Stanley and I were watching the girls become acquainted and recalling the first days of our work, our mistrusts and arguments.
And our misunderstandings. I thought of how many hours we wasted in argument, only to find that we had simply misunderstood each other, that we had not or would not open ourselves to cooperation.
During our day at the farm, Don was working, as we say, without unbending his back. So, when we all gathered in the evening, I had only one question to ask.
Мне бы хотелось знать, что они знают о Советском
So I
Союзе.
would like to know, what do you know about the Soviet Union?
Very little. What we read in maybe Time magazine or Newsweek and U.S. World Report, and once in a while we'll see a good program on TV.
I feel I know very little about the people in the Soviet Union.
I know very little, but I would like to find out a lot, because it seems very interesting to me.
After this first meeting, I wondered if perhaps this particular lack of knowledge might be the root of our misunderstanding. Another meeting, this time with a family of an entirely different social status. I wanted to see what these people knew and felt about my country. Ray Houchin is a retired international airlines pilot, a man who has seen much. He lives with his wife Joan, who is a former member of the Washington State House of Representatives and is currently active in the Republican Party. On the day of our visit, they were entertaining their friends,
Dr. and Mrs. Hunter.
a common and friendly American weekend. Ray remarked about the pleasant communalities of humor and then said that although he had not been to our country, he had heard that we have no freedom, visitors are not allowed to go everywhere, and that many of our homes have bugs or microphones in them. His friend added that in the United States, quality and talent can rise to the top.
Whereas it is the perception of most people in this country that under communism or socialism, the emphasis is on leveling, that everyone is reduced to the same level, not elevated to the same level, but reduced to the same level, and that there isn't the opportunity for a freedom of talent to express itself. It is my perception that the government of Russia has a fear of the government of the United States and what their intentions might be. And I know that in this country we have a fear of the Russians and what their intentions might be. You fear that which you don't know.
We parted very peacefully, but I had an unpleasant aftertaste in my soul. Why did these intelligent people, who have seen so much, have such a wrong, frightening idea about my country? Why are they afraid of us? In the Soviet Union, Stanley had asked to film the local police. As a comparison, we decided to visit the police in Mount Vernon. During this visit, it occurred to me that for many years, we journalists of both countries, out of a rainbow of colors available, have used only black for describing the other side.
Here we go.
We told our people only parts of the truth, and so their opinions and their fears were formed. As an example, I knew a lot about the struggle of American police against the mafia and drugs, but very little about them dealing with such commonplace and even funny situations as a girl locking herself out of her car. This was a new color for me. If some of our problems are due to imprecise information, perhaps others result from the absence of it. Some things in this country seem strange to me. I'm not used to children earning money, but is it so bad once you realize that from childhood they learn to be independent and so do not burden their parents? Looking at the children, I caught myself thinking that they have no fear in their eyes, only curiosity. And while adults always seem to know the answers, children try to ask questions, sometimes funny ones, but they do want to know.
Yeah, is it always snowing down there in Moscow like they showed in the films, or is it, do we... weather? Allen Grade School, and the students see for the first time a day at a common Soviet school. Stanley told me in Moscow that we would surely visit an American school. So, in preparation for this, we filmed a usual day in my daughter's 4th form class. I watched closely the faces and reactions of the children. When the tape finished, we were showered with questions. It seemed to take so little information to open their minds.
Do you have any computers in your class?
Do you celebrate holidays at your school?
What do you eat for your meals? What do you think about America so far? Do you like it?
While looking at and talking with these American children, I kept recollecting a story which Stanley told me.
After my son Matthew and I returned from our filming in Soviet Armenia, I asked him what changes he had experienced. How differently did he see things now? He thought a bit and answered, "Dad, you are older. You were changed. I just learned."
Yes, children do not need to change. They are as they are. They need just a few minutes in order to become friends for the whole life. They do not have behind them many years of distrust, fear, and contradictions. Whether this friendship is really for the whole life depends on how we bring them up and what we teach them.
And then we can write our ABC down. And you can write it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
How many stars do we have in our flag?
50.
The life of Denise Zamora is not simple. She teaches her children herself because she considers that there is no God in American schools. She gives piano lessons, cleans the houses of her neighbors, and makes her family's clothes.
How do you say I love you?
I love you.
Very good.
Okay, well, thanks, Isaac. And here's an adult urchin here.
Her husband, Sam, works intermittently as a construction worker and helps with the children's education.
Let me see if I can focus this in for you.
Easy day.
Having learned about our project, she called us and offered to meet.
We hate communism because it's totally contradictory to everything we understand, everything we stand for. It's foreign to us, you know, and we think, whoa, that's pretty heavy. But we love the Russian people. Speaking for myself again, speaking as a Christian woman, for one, anything that is anti-God to me has no place in my life, okay? And we're talking bottom line here, okay? Let's be very frank, okay? And respectful and frank. Bottom line is that it's definitely ungodly. Communism, compared to the essence of liberty, of freedom, even when you don't compare it, it seems to be not as accommodating to human nature. I haven't studied it in depth, but what I know about it does not attract me as just the human being. The best we can do is try to learn to respect one another. We can have treaties, we can play this game all the day long, but unless people are going to say, you're different from me, I respect you. You are different from me, I respect you as well. And as long as we don't have aggression toward each other, I think we'll be able to hold off. But there are
Denise's beliefs were so strong. I thought that Stanley, as an American, should answer the next question.
Do you, since you've been over there, do you believe that the Russian people love us or could lovingly tolerate us as well as we might them?
More so. I think they're much more accepting of us and as a people have a stronger desire. I think they do so for a lot of reasons. I think one big one is that they really do understand war and they really are afraid of it and they're really frightened. And now we're beginning to show interest in other people.
I really like Denise. I like her straightforwardness, sincerity, her tremendous desire to learn, her friendliness despite our disagreements. When we departed, Denise presented us a card which said, "Please come back soon." Steve Hopley is a fisherman. He works alone.
Well, I went into the military in 1971, had draft notice in hand. I worked as interpreter, translator to the Soviet military liaison mission, which was in Frankfurt, in West Germany. I don't think that the people that I ever really looked at them particularly as the enemy. I was working with them every day, and it was a very business-like sort of relationship. We were antagonists, but that I think is to be expected. I didn't leave that job with a great feeling of trust in dealing with the official Soviet people. In fact, you could say that I had a measure of distrust. We have to deal with them with both eyes open and not feel that any agreements that we are going to make with them are going to be upheld simply because they're there. They won't be adhered to just simply because they said they would.
Doesn't it seem that this guy is right in some respects? Have always the actions of my country in the international arena been irreproachable? Have we always been flexible enough in relationships with his country? For a long time, both of us have been guided by the principle that what is bad for one country is good for the other. I wanted to know more about Steve's love for his homeland.
We're we're real lucky. We're in a temperate zone. The weather's pretty decent, and it's a beautiful country, and it's peopled by good people. Those are the things I love the most about it: the people and the land itself. But basically,
I asked Steve what he would like to say to the Soviet people.
У вас великая страна, очень хорошая, по-моему. Вы имеете
You have a great and good country, in my opinion.
заниматься свое место в мире.
And you have earned the right to occupy your own place in the world.
Не надо быть такие
There should not be distrust and difficulties between our countries. This will require much work.
Yes, we have much work to do. We Soviet people want people in other countries, especially the United States, to think of us positively, at least with respect, and we get frustrated, offended, and outraged when they do not. We should look truth into the eyes. Many people in this country do not trust us, and this cannot be wholly blamed on American ruling circles. There is much to do, and also much to undo. Skagit Valley is famous for its forests and its logging. Many people we met here were proud to tell us that they used to be loggers because in this area it is a symbol of strength, simple natural life, and straightforward talk.
Yeah, I see the Soviets as our enemy today. Sometime in the future, maybe not, you know. I really don't know if we can ever be friends with them or not. I'm not in a position to really know. It would be nice if the world could be at peace with each other one of these days, all the different countries.
I see the Soviet Union just as another country. They're people just like us, trying to raise their families and make a living. They have different beliefs, maybe, or different way of life, maybe a little bit, but I think basically they're about the same. Myself, I know very little about them, and I watch TV or read newspapers as much as the next guy. We have to look just not like that's Russia and this is the United States, but it's our planet, you know, as a whole.
To love your own country does not mean you must hate another. Any movement towards understanding benefits all of us. During the production, our trust increased as we allowed ourselves to move closer together.
I hope they're our friends, you know. I don't want to ever go to war or nothing. You know, two superpowers, there's never going to be a winner. I think it's the individuals and the government, everybody. We all got to try. Right?
Veterans Day is one of the most respected celebrations in the United States. But this time at Jefferson School it was quite unusual. American school children honored both American and Soviet veterans of the Second World War. For many people in both countries, our friendship during the war is a symbol and an example. I brought with me a letter and picture from a Soviet veteran addressed to an American one. I had been asked to present these to a soldier who fought our common enemy in Europe in respect for old memories. My trip to the United States is coming to a close. It made me change a lot in my attitude toward this country. It does not mean that I like everything here, of course not. But here I made many friends, people who I love and understand. I believe that they are feeling about me the same way. So, my trip is over, but my work has only begun.